You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings, America's #1 sportsbook app. All right, now joined by Jason Scheer. I am merely Mike Luke. We've got a lot to get to this show. But first, we are going to talk a little bit about the national media right here as it pertains to the University of Arizona. And I'm going to give my opinion here first, and then I'm going to let Scheer, who has basically been the frontline soldier, the William Wallace, if you will, of the fight against ESPN and national bias / lying. Here's what Seth Greenberg said a little bit earlier. For all the small-minded, self-absorbed at Arizona men's basketball trolls, he tags Arizona twice in case they didn't see it the first time. Last week's Player of the Week all had huge impacts on their team. And for JTT, a return after a brutal injury, sorry, the world of college basketball is bigger than Arizona men's basketball. All right. That to me is rich coming from the guy that's literally famous for his team never making the NCAA tournament and every single year complaining about a bias in the committee against him. But even more so than that, forget Greenberg for a second. The reason people are distrustful of the national media and ESPN is they've literally been caught lying time and time again, and they never correct anything. They never say, oops, our bad. That's where it is, and that's where I give the leadoff bat to Jason Scheer.
I mean, the thing is, like, Arizona fans don't trust ESPN to begin with. And then you have one of their main on-air personalities being like, look, I don't really care that he went for 40-9. That's basically what Seth Greenberg is saying. Meanwhile, he has a guy in there. You know, I like the JTT story on Baylor. Cool story. You want to put him there, that's fine. But Juju Reese had 16 points. That's it.
Right.
16 points. Cool. You know, Azuolas Tubelis had literally one of the best performances of the entire season, and it's like it never happened. I mean, Dick Vitale did the same thing with his awards, and the guy he gave it to, he spelled the wrong name. He didn't even have the right player. And so it's like, look, Arizona fans already think, in my opinion, correctly, that ESPN doesn't like them. And then you take the next step this week, and it's like, come on, guys. I mean, we're at a point where it's just ridiculous.
Well, it's ridiculous, too, on a number of fronts because, again, Seth Greenberg, of all people, and they know what they're doing right there. He knows he works for ESPN. He knows why Arizona fans don't trust ESPN because they literally almost brought down the entire program. The other thing that I think drives people up a wall is that, you know, the whole Sean Miller thing came out, and yes, Book Richardson got popped for sure, no doubt about it. But the NCAA didn't find anything at the top levels right there. And it's like that wasn't reported. And I'll tell you one thing, I have texts from Mark Schlabach saying that he would come on this podcast after everything was adjudicated. Well, Mark is not responding to any of my texts anymore, and I'm doubting that he changed his phone number. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's why people are pissed.
Do you remember when we sat together in radio and I texted Dick Vitale with you?
Yes, I do.
He said, I'll go on your podcast. I was like, oh, man, this is it. And then an hour later, he goes, oh, my agent said I'm busy.
Yeah, my agent said I'm busy. It's like, dude, we want 5 minutes. You spent a lot of time bashing the University of Arizona. Now, you know, and you know, honestly, I think if people were to just say, you know what, we got it wrong. I trusted the wrong person. You know, like Seth Greenberg could easily come out tomorrow and say, listen, man, and he won't do it, obviously. The Schlabach report was trash. I shouldn't have fallen for it. I did. My bad. And honestly, I think that Arizona fans would be somewhat forgiving in that regard. Now, Schlabach's never going to be forgiven. But if people that heard him, that just went with it, I think people would forgive that sheer.
The only guy I know for a fact that called Sean up since this whole thing was Fran Fraschilla. And he apologized to Sean, and he said, I went with the people around me. I was wrong. I apologize. And that was it wasn't recent, but it was pretty soon after the whole allegation was proven wrong. Like, he didn't drag it out or anything. So that's kind of, they're cool. But I don't think anyone else on ESPN, even forget going on TV, I don't think anyone called Sean and was like, I'm sorry, or we screwed up or anything like that. And, like you said, Schlabach is a lost cause. But if Jay Bilas went on TV and was like, you know what, looking back on it, I screwed up. We had the wrong information. I apologize. It would go a long way with most fans, but they just won't do it. It's just ESPN's philosophy, basically, not to apologize for that stuff.
All right. Now, we have our growing fan base right here. MP, one of the new Lithuanian fans on the podcast, been waiting for hours. Let's go. Bear down. Also, back the A. And Korea right here, 940 in Estonia. We love having our Estonian friends and our Lithuanian friends. You've been very good to us. But let's talk a little bit about first the Lithuanian and then the Estonian. You mentioned Azuolas Tubelis. I don't care how it happens. I don't care. He has to be a first team All-American. Again, I get that there's other players you have to put on there. Zach Edey to me is the National Player of the Year. I have no problem with that. A good buddy of mine said that Umar Ballo would eat him alive. I don't believe that. I love Umar Ballo, but Zach Edey to me is the best player in the country. But right after that, Azuolas Tubelis is right there. He has to be a first team All-American in my pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's Zach Edey's the Player of the Year. I won't even argue against it. I if you want to really dig down and try to make a case, whatever, but he's going to win Player of the Year, and I'm perfectly cool with it. Azuolas Tubelis, to me, is the second best player in the country.
Yes.
I mean, because when it gets down to it, there has to be something said for consistency. And Azuolas puts up those numbers every single game. Like Trace Jackson Davis, people are on all over him. But early in the season, he wasn't putting up numbers. Azuolas puts up numbers every single game. He hasn't really had a bad game. And his performance against Oregon was maybe for the first time where I saw him play and I said, this dude's different. And he's put up like 25 and 50.
And sure, that was an easy 42. That's what's crazy about it.
That's one of the best performances I've ever seen because you're looking at him and Oregon's trying and everything Zoo does just looks easy. And it's very rare you see a performance like that. And I don't know how you watch a performance like that and go, okay, this dude he's different. And to me, it's Zach Edey, Azuolas Tubelis, and I don't really care about the rest because it's them two.
Totally agree with that. Now we're going to talk about our Estonian friends as well right now. But first, OGs. You might have saw my tweet. EGs in Tucson stinks now. It's not good anymore. I gave it another shot. Not impressed at all. I will not say that about OGs, though. Go to your local dispensary, 21 and up, Arizona only, and you can get sativas, indicas, you name it. They've got it right there. OGs for if you're like Sheer and you sleep until 12 and you don't need it. But if you want to have some fun during the day, get OGs and the Four Peaks. Now, you might say to yourself, Mike, what's the Four Peaks? Thanks for asking. The Four Peaks right here have been the official brew of PHNX, but on top of that, you can also, the Four Peaks have been mentioned by Matt Muehlbach and many others on broadcasts, but the original Four Peaks is the brew of PHNX Sports. You can get it at our Tap and Bottle watch parties February 11th. Would love to see you there. All right, now let's talk about Kerr Kriisa right here. The thing with Kerr Kriisa is that we're kind of at the point now where I think it's fair to say that he's never going to be a high percentage shooter. But, man, he is somebody that you want on your side. He is somebody that you want on your team. And I'm not just speaking for Tommy Lloyd there. I'm speaking for a lot of people. Not that Tommy Lloyd cares what I say. But
the thing with him is even though he's not going to be a high percentage shooter, he's still going to go on little streaks like we've seen the last 2 weeks because his form is there. He's not – he's kind of a weird deal because it looks right every time it comes off his hand. But for whatever reason. But the last 2 weeks, he's shooting like 50%. But – the thing with him is he'll go to war for you. Like he'll run. I don't think he gets enough credit for running one of the best offenses in the country. And that's the thing. People look at the shooting numbers and all that, but at the end of the day, he is one of the winningest point guards in the country over the last 2 years. and he runs one of the best offenses in the country. Stats be damned. There is a considerable difference in how smooth the offense runs when he's on the court versus when he's off it.
Right. And looking next year a little bit, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if he were to come back, it's an interesting backcourt next year because I don't care what happens. Kylan Boswell's starting. I don't, wherever he is, Kylan Boswell and Kerr Kriisa is kind of an interesting little backcourt right there. And you made the point too that Kerr Kriisa, the stats and the numbers don't really indicate just how much of a better he is or this team is when he's on the court. He and the synergy that he and Tubelis have together is fantastic. It's next level.
Yeah, I mean, the pick and roll with Zoo, like we mentioned the Oregon game, they were doing that all game. And if you watch them, they work together perfectly. And I know that the bad shooting nights are frustrating. And he's going to have games where he turns over the ball a little bit too much. But you kind of just take it, because there's going to be games also where he is absolutely fantastic. And Arizona goes and scores 90 points because he's running the offense to perfection. And so you got to kind of take the bad, knowing that there's going to be more good along the way.
All right. Now, I promised that we would get to all the Estonians. Now, let's talk about Henry Veesaar and my guy, Dylan Anderson, your adopted guy, Dylan Anderson, right there. I like seeing more. I like seeing the bench emptied out a little bit here. I get that you're going with a 7-man rotation now. You start tightening it up. Luke did this. Sean Miller did this. Every coach does it. But I do like getting these guys minutes when you can, because I don't feel that any three of these guys are lost causes. As a matter of fact, and I've been ridiculed on your board a lot, I think Dylan Anderson is going to be a multi-year starter, and I have not at all given up on Adama Ball. As a matter of fact, I like Adama Ball. I'm still in on Adama Ball. Is Jason Scheer in on all three of these players?
Yeah, I mean, a big reason why is I believe Tommy Lloyd at his word, right? A lot of coaches BS you. I don't feel like Tommy Lloyd's one of these guys.
He's told us that off record.
Right, and he's told us that, and he said, look, it may take 1, 2, 3 years, but he'll get to where we want him to be and where he wants to be. And it's different because in this day and age, a lot of teams say you're not good enough after a year, get off the team. Tommy Lloyd's different. He's going to develop guys. He's going to take guys that maybe aren't ready right away, but he's looking down the road a few years later. He's saying this guy is going to be really good. And it's a different feeling from Sean Miller and from a lot of other coaches throughout the country because there's development going on in Arizona where there isn't other places. And I don't think Dylan Anderson, Veesaar, or Ball, I don't think any of them are lost causes. It just may not happen as soon as everybody wanted it to happen.
Right. Now let's see. Was hoping for news about the Four Peaks. That's the Four Peaks. That's the only thing we can give you right there, my guy, in the Four Peaks. But again, Four Peaks all the way in Estonia and Lithuania. Get the movement going. Now let's talk a little bit about before we switch back to this year's team. Let's do a little bit of recruiting talk because I always forget about this. But when we have the dawn of recruiting on, by the way, big shout out to Jason Scheer right now, for being the only guy to mention, to my knowledge, the new cornerbacks coach for the U of A. We will get to that. But again, Scheer, let me see you pat yourself on the back. That was good work. All right. Nice stuff. All right. Dedan Thomas, top 40 point guard out of Las Vegas, was at the U of A this past week. The fans were chanting, or the student section was chanting Dedan. Obviously, it's been interesting because you've got Houston right in there. His father is a UNLV great. Where does Arizona stand right now with the top 40 point guard out of Las Vegas?
I would say that Arizona's biggest competition is Houston, but UNLV and UCLA are very much in the picture. I mean, he's I don't want to say he's wide open, but he's given each school a legitimate look. Arizona's being really negatively recruited right now because of Boswell and how good Boswell is.
That's a good thing.
It's a positive and a negative at the same time, but they have to overcome that, and the other schools really don't. But Arizona feels, and some feedback from Thomas is that the visit this past weekend went really well.
Okay, and he would not be coming in this year; he'd be coming in the following year. So there would be a little bit of a buffer zone right there. But if you're Arizona and you got Kerr Kriisa coming back and you got Kylan Boswell, there really is no reason for to need Dedan Thomas. Now, Thierry Darlan, I know what you're going to say on this, but every time I announce you're coming on, I get generally 2 to 3 DMs, not the sexy DMs, the question DMs, asking me to ask you, is there anything new?
No, it is going to be Arizona or the G League, from what I understand. It's too close to call right now. I don't want to, like, I could say Arizona. I'm leaning Arizona right now, and if it doesn't happen, people will kill me. So right now, it is too close to call. We'll
All right, now let's talk now going forward and where Arizona is in the grand scheme of things. But first, Tap and Bottle, February 11th. Join us there at 6 o'clock. We would love to see you there. Tap and Bottle watch parties. While somebody like Jason Shear is furiously typing away his game notes, which I tell him don't need to be done, but he does them anyway, we will be there yelling at the screen, drinking some Four Peaks. We'd love to see you up there. Tap and Bottle downtown and Illegal Pete's. Anybody that's under the age of 40 knows about Illegal Pete's. High energy, good food. Even our good friend Ben White has gotten action at Illegal Pete's from time to time. If it works for Ben, it can work for you. Check it out. Good food, good drinks. Check out the show notes and the link in the description. I'm sorry, Ben. You know I love you. All right, now let's get back to some of these questions here. Actually, they're asking about Lithuanian basketball podcasts. I don't have any info on that. All right. So Arizona right now is ranked 4th in the nation. I look at teams around the country, and Arizona can beat absolutely any one of these teams. I know Purdue's number 1. Purdue, to me, still is very beatable. Now, I don't believe that Umar Bala will eat Zach Edey alive like others might, but Purdue's beatable. A team like Texas worries me a little bit. Anybody that's got physical athletic guards, I think can cause some problems for Arizona. Houston, but there's not a team out there, Sheer, where I'm like, oh, no chance if they play them. Not one team.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point of the year where whenever I watch another game, I compare them to Arizona. And like you mentioned, I don't see a team where I go, oh, crap. Even Houston, I think Arizona is better equipped to handle that style of play this year than it was last year. I think last year was kind of shocked by it. This year it won't be. But, you take a look, and a lot of times it will say, oh, the NCAA tournament's open, and it winds up not being that open. This year feels like it's going to be a wild tournament. Because like you mentioned, Purdue's number 1, deserves to be number 1, but very beatable. Houston's beatable, hasn't played well the last few weeks. And every team down the line, if I'm looking, the teams that would bother me or scare me a little bit as an Arizona fan are those teams with athletic wings, like Miami even. Watching them last night, I know they're top 15 or whatever, and Arizona's rated higher, but Miami has athleticism. They have scorers. They're really good offensively. That would be the type of team that I wouldn't want to see early in the tournament.
Is there a team in the country that has better wins than Arizona right now? And just to rehash here, you got Tennessee, which is very good. You got UCLA, which is very good. You've got Indiana from the juggernaut that is the Big Ten. Then you've got Creighton. You got San Diego State. These are all teams that are in the top 25. I will put that against anybody because, quite frankly, the quad 1 wins of Purdue beating Ohio State and Michigan State do absolutely nothing for me.
Yeah, to me, no. Like when you look at the best wins in the country, I mean, Texas has the Big 12 wins, but you take a look at some other schools in its neutral court. And the one thing that people take away from Arizona is they weren't on the road. There's no big, true road win. But looking back at it, it's like you look around at even Purdue. Purdue is 9-2 in quad 1, I think, but there's no win that you go, oh crap, like that was it. Alabama lost to Gonzaga early in the year, and UConn and
Alabama is a team that if I were to go with one team that I would not like to play in the tournament would be Alabama. Sorry, go ahead, Sheer.
No, I agree with that. I mean, we both agreed a couple weeks ago Alabama was the best team in the country. I'm not sure I feel differently right now than I did back then, but you take a look at Arizona's best wins and stack them up, and they have the best wins, and it's just gonna come down to, does the committee look at the best wins, or are they going to focus on losses? And you never really know which way they're going to go.
Tommy Lloyd, I put it out there the other day. He won't get it. I mean, I'm assuming Matt Painter or a Tang will get it, but you could make a very, very strong case that Tommy Lloyd should be the National Coach of the Year for the second year in a row, 2 out of 2.
Yeah, I absolutely think you could make a case. He won't get it. It'll go to Jerome Tang, like you mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if like Rodney Terry on Texas got votes because of the whole situation and how well they've played. But for Tommy Lloyd to lose 3 NBA picks, reload, compete to win the conference, and have a 1 seed again, it's almost unheard of, because it's not like he went to the transfer portal and landed a bunch of stars and rebuilt his team. He pretty much developed guys. He added Ramey and Cedric Henderson, but those aren't like first round draft picks. The ability to get a guy like Umar, to improve the way, to make the right moves and all that. He absolutely, and we were discussing this a few weeks ago. I think this year's coaching job is more impressive than last year's coaching job because of everything that happened.
Yeah, I do too. And look at the starting lineup right now. Kerr Kriisa, I don't care what Mike Schmidt says, and this is not a diss towards Kerr Kriisa. Kerr Kriisa is not going to play in the NBA. I would be stunned if he did. I don't care what Schmidt says. Courtney Ramey's not playing in the NBA. Pella Larson's not playing in the NBA. Zoo's got a real chance. Umar Ballo, to me, is not playing in the NBA either. So you've got one guy that we look at, and he's not going to be a high pick by any means, Azuolas Tubelis. And it's like, generally, when you have teams like this, you look around, you're like, there's an NBA guy, there's an NBA guy. I mean, heck, we saw it last year. We saw it with Sean Miller. We've seen it with Lute Olson. That, to me, is what's really unique because you might only have one NBA guy on this roster outside of Dylan Anderson. My bad.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the fact that you go from 3 guys to 2 lottery, and then Ben Mathurin is the NBA Rookie of the Year, and you lost him, and you somehow found a way to replace his productivity. I mean, it is as impressive as any coach in the country. I just don't think he'll win the award. Right. I think it'll probably go to the guys that we mentioned.
Now, let's move over to football for a second. But first, Mountain Mike's Pizza. Sheer has been to Mountain Mike's Pizza, correct?
I have.
What did you think? Only tell me if you think it was good.
Yeah, not bad.
All right. Oracle and Wetmore, check it out. Again, I am not Mountain Mike. Mountain Mike has much more money than I do, even though I've never met Mountain Mike. Check it out, though. Good pizzas, good setup, great place to watch the game, great place to watch Sheer tweet throughout the game if you're really into that. Check it out, though. Oracle and Wetmore. Great pizza, and they'll probably be at the Tap and Bottle watch party this Saturday. Also, Octane Raceway in Scottsdale. Let's say you're like Sheer and you got one daughter that's an adolescent, the other one that's creeping up in there, Sheer, and they want to say, and they say, Dad, I want to go have a good time this weekend. Octane Raceway is where you go. You go up to Scottsdale, you can get into race cars, you can play pool, bowling, good food, good drink, you name it, they've got it. Check out Octane Raceway in Scottsdale. All right, real quick. TJ Van Martyr. I think Ballo could be a back-end rotation play. His physicality and skill around the rim have improved considerably. I agree with that, but my standard is kind of Kofi Coburn, I guess is how it's pronounced.
You can say it.
It's Kofi Cockburn. Come on, let's be honest here. There's no such thing as a silent CK in any. There's just no such thing. But that to me is kind of the comparison right there. And if he couldn't really make it, I just don't see how Ballo could, but I would love to be wrong.
Yeah, I would be surprised, but I mean, who knows? His improvement from last year to this year is wild. So maybe next year, I would hope that he returns to college next year and tries to kind of keep on going in the right direction.
All right, now let's get to the Arizona football right here. Since we last talked, Dwayne Aquina is now on as an analyst. I think we can safely say that Dwayne Aquina is easily the most qualified football analyst the world has ever seen. And you got a new defensive backs coach. Tell us what we need to know about the defensive backs coach, Mr. Breaking News left and right guy.
So he is a legitimately good coach. He was part of the whole Rolo thing where they fired a bunch of coaches at Washington State. And he's the guy that when the job opened up, there were a few 7-on-7 programs that right away tweeted, Arizona should look at John Richardson. And the reason is because he's connected in SoCal and he's a legitimately good coach. So you got a good coach and a guy that's going to put Arizona and SoCal even more. I like the hire a lot. And he's not going to, ruffle any feathers or anything like that. Good guy, high reviews, really nice hire. And the fact that they could add Aquina as an analyst who will eventually get on the field because of the NCAA rules, I mean, it's a big win for Jen.
Can you explain that a little bit right there? Because I'm still a little confused by that as well. What is the deal with an analyst now and about being able to get onto the field?
So they're going to pass a rule. It's expected. I don't know when, but the expectation is they're going to pass a rule that basically allows analysts to work with players. Right now, analysts can only supposedly legally watch film and do that. But now the expectation, and Jed Fish said it too, is they're going to pass a rule that allows analysts to be on the field during practice and actually work with guys. If that rule wasn't getting passed, I think Aquino is probably just the cornerbacks coach. But the fact that rule is getting passed allowed them to hire him as an analyst and then hire a cornerbacks coach and have them work together.
All right, I got beat up by a lot of Utah fans yesterday, and I don't know why this thread is still going on, but there's been 40,000 views to something that I thought was dumb, but whatever. My Pac-12 South power rankings, and again, I realize there's no Pac-12 South. I don't care. My rankings, not theirs. Here's what I got, Sheer. Tell me where you think that I'm wrong here. I've got USC at number 1. I got Utah at number 2. I am back in the A at number 3 right there. I look for a big improvement. UCLA 4, Colorado 5, ASU a distant 6. Doesn't need to even be talked about. Am I being fanboy right there by putting Arizona 3rd?
I don't think so. I mean, UCLA is introducing a new quarterback, and I know he's really good, but it's still a freshman quarterback. Colorado still has to improve. ASU, we don't know. I mean, 46 new players is insane. We have no idea how it'll work out. I think USC is clearly 1 and Utah's clearly 2. Maybe they're close, but you made the mistake. You picked against Utah in any way, shape, or form, and they're coming at you.
Yeah, and it's dumb too because, again, I think they're a top 10 to 15 team. I just don't think that they're USC. And, oh, by the way, guess who agrees with me? Las Vegas. Take that, Salt Lake City fan.
Yeah, you can't mess with Utah fans, man. Anything is a sign of disrespect. They're coming for everything you've got.
All right. Well, you know what? I appreciate the passion. Now, let's talk about the Big 12 vis-a-vis the Pac-12 a little bit. We had the great Dave Hickey on, my guy, your guy, and he talked about, all kinds of, different things and whatnot. What I also take away from this, though, is that Hourland and Marchand both now, I'll let you explain who they are, but they're getting a little nervous now about a possible deal being done. What's the latest on that front from those guys right there? Because they're pretty connected. This isn't Canzano and Wilner.
Yeah, those guys to me are the best in the business.
Who are they again? Explain. Who are they again?
They're sports business writers. So this is what they do. Andrew Marchand, John Oren. This is their job. This isn't like columnists just dipping into it. This is what they do. They have a fantastic podcast. The general feeling among people that would know is the longer this takes, the scarier it gets, because eventually you're now moving closer to where it's a year. You're a year away from getting into the no contract territory. And so basically what they're saying is when you get to a certain point, schools are going to get itchy because they're going to try to secure what's best for them. And so if the longer this goes, the more dangerous it gets for the Pac-12.
Arizona in the Big 12 would just be absolutely fantastic. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. I watched last night Kansas and Texas, thinking about home and homes with them. Then you got, in other schools too, you don't even think about. Kansas State is awesome now. Iowa State is awesome. Baylor. That is the conference of basketball champions right there, Jason Shear.
Yeah, we always laugh the Big 10 gets 10 teams in and all that. The Big 12 is the best conference in America. It's not even close.
By a mile.
You're going on the road at Kansas and following it up with on the road at, Iowa
Texas
State,
and then Kansas State and then Iowa State and Baylor. And you just
that's another team, by the way, I don't want Arizona facing the way they're playing lately.
You have come around. Jason Shear, big mistake right there.
Yeah.
You're in on Scott Drew.
Yeah. He's a good coach. That's a good team. And that's another one of those freaky athletic teams I don't want to see.
Tell your boy Dave Hickey to make it happen. The streets want it. Trust me, Dave knows very well where I stand on that. Oh, Nick Howard in here, the great Nick Howard. By the way, congratulations, a father again. Nick, you are the beast. One of the all-time people here back in the A. This is a crazy stat. All 12 Big 12 teams are in the top 70 of net. That's wild right there. All right. Now, before we sign off there, Arizona football, though, I put the over-under, not Vegas, I put the over-under at 6 wins. What do you put it at? Would you go over? Would you go under? And you can't say push.
If I can't say push, I'd go over. I think 7 is more likely than 5.
So you're back in the 8 to 7 wins right there.
I need a bowl game, Mike. I'm tired of sitting home, and I want to go to a random, meaningless bowl game. All
right, Sheer. Now, I'm going to let you plug yourself right. Oh, that sounded terrible. All right. Wildcat Authority, the number one. The number one.
I'm going to plug myself on the internet. You don't Google that.
Please don't. We won't be making one of those short clips of that. But again, joking aside, this is the best place to be out there. as far as interaction. I'm on there harassing people, getting people upset. Shear's there breaking news. What do you got? What deals do you got going on right now, Shear?
Wildcat Authority, no deals right now. We'll probably have a deal coming up, March Madness and all that. But that is if we're allowed on air again after this. But we'll yeah, and then we have a podcast, Wildcat Scoop, me and Shelby. Make sure you listen to that. We preview all the games and everything.
By the way, the great Ricky Garrett dubbed her nickname. Have you been running with this on the podcast?
Yeah, she's telling everyone. The streets are hot with that nickname.
The Queen of Wildcat Authority. There is nothing better than that. That also sounds like somebody not to mess with. Oh, by the way, back the plug. That's all right. On that note, everybody out there, really appreciate you. Oh, Andre Veras, one really quick question. This is a good one. UCLA basketball fans or Utah football fans? Who's worse?
I think UCLA basketball. Like all I did was tweet after the game like a stat, and before you knew it, I was getting like death threats. It wasn't good. Oh,
by the way, I am in on this. We were talking about this last night. Here's what all Arizona fans should be rooting for is, and again, this is kind of this. Basically, it's because my hatred of the national media and ESPN supersedes UCLA. We need Arizona to win out, except maybe once against UCLA, because that would ensure them the number 1 seed out west. We don't have to worry about anything like that. Then UCLA would possibly have an opportunity to be a number 1 seed somewhere else, and the college basketball national elite would blow up in the process.
Yeah, can you imagine 2 Pac-12 teams with 1 seeds? They wouldn't know what to do themselves. It'd be amazing.
Well, quote Jay Billis, you just can't do it. Just can't happen.
Impossible.
Right. All right. He's Jason Shear. I'm Mike Luke. As always, really appreciate all of you. Our fans from Lithuania and Estonia, appreciate all your input. Keep spreading the word. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We got Ryan Hansen coming on. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.